I think the problem with Starbucks is that it's too expensive. That's the real reason why I think people aren't going. And also, well, actually, let me just watch the fucking video rather than just giving all of my opinions before the video even happens. Okay, here we go.
Starbucks is struggling. Their profits are down by a whopping 50% following 6 straight quarters of losses. And a declining image has left one of America's most recognizable brands in a bit of a bind. They just recently announced that they'd be closing a swathe of stores as well as laying off 900 corporate staff members. This is after laying off another 1,100 corporate staff just in February. Customers are reporting high prices, long queues, and substandard product time and time again. And even staples like their pumpkin spice latte has lost its shine and left room for competitors to take their shot.
10 years ago they did that.
With great success in some cases. But it wasn't always like this. At one point, Starbucks was America's sweetheart.
Here's the reason why Starbucks is losing sales. It's because pricing is too high. Everything is too expensive in the store. And there are too many other places like McDonald's, the McCafe, a lot of other fast food restaurants like Dunkin' Donuts, Jack in the Box have all tried to take a slice out of Starbucks pie. And so whenever Starbucks came out, it had a de facto monopoly on any sort of to-go coffee. But now, because there's so many other places that offer relatively the same thing, there's less reason to go to Starbucks. That's the reason why I think that's why I think it's mainly happening.
It's a real hero's journey. The story of one man.
It's not because of, the Palestine divestment. It's not because of fucking the union with Starbucks employees. It's not because Donald Trump won the presidency. It's because there's simply cheaper and better and more convenient options to go to that also have other food that's available as well, like McDonald's and Jack in the Box. That's why I think it's happening.
A local coffee roaster,
so let's see if I'm right.
Global sensation, left, then came back and did it all again. But since those days, clearly quite a lot has changed. Largely for the worst. And it's left Starbucks in a situation where it's fighting desperately, but doesn't seem to have quite as many customers in its corner as it once did. So sit back and let's learn why Starbucks fell off.
Whew.
People tend to have quite strong opinions about coffee, especially about other people's coffee choices. Some people will look at you like you just admitted.
My favorite coffee is Dr. Pepper.
Drinking horse urine if you tell them that you like Starbucks. But others might need their double shot vanilla, hazelnut, methamphetamine, venti frappuccino literally every morning. But no matter which side of the aisle you end up landing on, it's pretty impossible to deny the impact that Starbucks has had.
They put meth in it now?
All of our lives. It began in 1971 when 3 partners, Jerry, Gordon, and Zev, opened a little store in Seattle's Pike Place Market. They had no intention of actually making coffee. Instead, they sold like roasted coffee beans, teas, and spices. And
damn, she got her titties out.
Really. They became a staple of the local community, a place where you could go get your beans, come home, and then brew them for the family. But things changed in 1982 with the arrival of one man, and a name that you might want to remember, Howard Schultz. In 1982, Howard Schultz joined as head of marketing, and on one of his very first business trips, he visited Milan, Italy, and experienced something that would completely change his business back home. Italian coffee bars. So at this time, in the 80s, coffee culture in America largely revolved around drip coffee, served in a big mug or a styrofoam cup,
you get it home.
Often with free refills in like a diner or an office. You would drink coffee for the caffeine, not for fun. In Italy, on the other hand, the story was a little bit different.
And the reason why this happened in Italy is because everybody's on welfare over there and nobody has a job. So it would make sense that they would have all day to sit at Starbucks because they're not doing anything else. This is the way it is in Europe. Nobody works over in Europe. Nobody works. Nobody has a job in Europe.
Coffee was a social ritual. It was something that you would drink at a bar with friends and as a communal activity as much as for the caffeine.
We know this.
It was something that would be woven into your day-to-day life and not neck down in order to get a jolt of energy. The drinks had standardized names, each of which was designed for a different type of gathering, and they were priced pretty fairly so that everyone could take part. A long shot from the way it was done in America. And Schultz saw this idea, tried to bring it to America to create this real third place where people could grab a drink with their friends, hang out, and make coffee part of their social life instead of just fuel. But it was actually a controversial idea, so controversial, in fact, that none of the original Starbucks bosses wanted to accept it. And so Schultz was forced to leave, start his own cafe chain, implement these ideas, and did it to such great success that he ended up coming back and buying out Starbucks from its original owner.
Fucking based. Absolutely fucking based. That's hilarious. I love it. Yeah, there we go. Oh my God.
Just 4
What a
years
guy.
later. And this is where the Starbucks that
I think also another reason why I think that COVID did irreparable damage to public space gatherings. Like in general, I think that after COVID happened, because it went on for so long, people became comfortable just staying at home, and there are less people that just go out and stay out somewhere in public in general. Critical fucking hit to public spaces. Exactly. Yeah. COVID and Starbucks is a public space. And so obviously it would be affected by it.
I would recognize today actually began. Starbucks became this place where everything was designed for familiarity and comfort. They chose round tables because they were less isolating and more inviting. They encouraged customers to take their time with their drinks, and every detail was carefully curated to make their cafes into community spots.
And this insight is actually one step farther. I don't think he might not talk about this, but like if you compare this to McDonald's, so even the color palette and the color decisions that were made at Starbucks were made to invite people to come into the store and to stay into the store. McDonald's was actually the opposite, and so was Taco Bell, where a lot of the ways that they kind of, they did color theming, they did very bright, vibrant primary colors, which for a lot of people are a little bit it's a little bit scary for them. They don't really like that as much. People aren't as comfortable with a color theme around them that's similar to that. And because of that, people spent less time at McDonald's. They spent less time at Taco Bell. And yeah, and hard seats. And hard seats are another one, synthetic color. It's off-putting. And so Starbucks even went one step farther with that. And Starbucks was one of the only places that had that. And you know now, you go to a Taco Bell or especially a McDonald's, even a Wendy's, and it has much more of a warm color feel to it than it did back then. And that's one of the reasons why.
Great success. They went from 6 stores in 1987
kids. There's a lot of reasons.
3,500 stores in the year 2000 when Schultz finally decided to step down as CEO. And when the 2008 recession finally hit and Starbucks was struggling once again, Howard Schultz came out of retirement like Pele or something to get them back to their roots of being this third place where anyone could hang out.
So this guy sold it at this guy didn't want it. This guy made his own company. His own company did so well that he bought the company that said that he couldn't make his own company. And then his company then did even better to the point where he sold it. And then it came back and it was doing worse without him. And then he buys it back to fix it again. Bro, this is like a fucking Jason Statham movie plot. Just one more job. One more job, Ted, then you're out of the game. But I'm retired. Ted, it's one more job. They've got Sarah. You need to help me. All right, I'm in.
Have an affordable, social, communal drink with a friend.
That's it.
He shut down all of the Starbucks in America for a day to retrain the baristas on how to improve their espresso quality. They brought in new machines, and the company experimented with new menu items and leaned heavily into becoming an ethical community spot. And it seemed like it worked. A couple of years post-recession, they were profitable again. No one could really seem to beat them, and they were everywhere. But no good thing lasts forever, unfortunately. The pandemic set in motion the real shift for Starbucks. The concept of hanging out indoors with others, which Starbucks had built its entire model on, was immediately cancelled, right? Coffee culture went back almost overnight to being incredibly individual. And the big winners from this were the drive-through coffee shops like Dutch Bros and Seven Brew, which grew steadily throughout this period. Starbucks did try to ride the wave by pushing their apps and their collection-only stores, but they were already in too deep with the old model and stuck between two worlds. Post-pandemic, almost 60% of coffee is actually ordered at drive-thrus in the US, and it's growing year on year. The pandemic was really this huge...
See, you said drive-thru, not Starbucks. That's what I was saying before about how it's all these other places that are doing the same thing. That's what it really is.
To spend their time. And sitting in a Starbucks was one of the first things to be cut from the budget. And despite the fact that their marketing materials would have you believe that they really want to be a community location where people can hang out, the reality is that Starbucks is a $90 billion corporation, and they've done all of the same things that you'd expect from any other company that size.
Yeah.
Over the last decade, they've really aggressively cut costs.
What a
they've
surprise.
deprioritized the look and feel of their stores, and they've focused on squeezing more profits out of their once extremely loyal clientele. Having a place where people buy one drink and then sit around for an hour is a really bad way to make money every quarter. And so they started making more and more stores have less and less seating. Their staffing priorities focused more on meeting...
I never felt like I belonged in a Starbucks. I never went inside a Starbucks and I sat down and I felt comfortable because I felt like I was, it's like if you put a raccoon in a house. It's just not supposed to be in the house.
Drive-through demand at the expense of in-store customers because they generate more dollars per hour. And they jacked up the prices to the absolute maximum that they thought they could get away with. But you can only squeeze people so far before they break. Since the pandemic, inflation has been pretty intense, and it seriously hit the food and drinks world. But also by the time the pandemic had rolled around, the coffee business was already bigger than ever, and there were more and more options for everyone at any price point. Starbucks had, to some degree, been able to justify its prices through all of the auxiliary perks that you would get along with your coffee. You get to
sit down, and, you know, it's a nice place to be. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, like, there was a value with that for sure.
Nice location, you wouldn't feel rushed or pressured to leave, and you had things like free Wi-Fi at your disposal, so you could even work there. But the hand was
I think that's also like that's actually a much bigger point than I think he's making it out to be. And maybe he's like a bit, I think the guy's a bit younger than I am, right? But you guys remember back, I mean, if you're a boomer like I am, I'm 35, you remember back in the day, like having free Wi-Fi and having Wi-Fi in an area was an actual value that people would go to. Like, people cared about this. Like, this was an actual thing that would affect the way that people behaved. Nowadays, I feel like that's not really the case anymore. It's not. It hasn't been for a long time. They steal your info? Yeah, if you log in, be very careful. My advice to any of you guys, if you do that, remember people go to Starbucks and play WoW League of Legends? Yeah, exactly, right? Of course. If you guys, this is a little bit of advice. If you guys have a phone, make sure that you have it to where it does not automatically connect to Wi-Fi networks. Always make sure you do that. Because you don't want to connect to a public network because they might not be secure. It's my advice.
Forced. And instead of doubling down on the third place model, they tried to align themselves more with the rapid delivery model. More and more coffee is consumed on the go, and the interior of a Starbucks has progressively shifted to meet the demand from those customers. And the $8 Starbucks cup of coffee doesn't quite feel as good when you order it from a drive-thru and drink it.
Exactly. You're ordering. So this is what's really ironic about this is that the opposite is affecting fast food restaurants through delivery drivers and delivery, like food delivery. So basically, a lot of people would pay extra for a sit-down meal experience at a Chili's or at, you know, like Applebee's or something like that. But when you're getting your food delivered and you have to choose between, you know, Applebee's and McDonald's or Chili's and McDonald's or Taco Bell or Burger King, most people are going to choose Chili's or Applebee's because the food is generally better, right? So because the prices are relatively similar now because of COVID increasing the prices of drive-thrus and fast food, what's happened is that you're seeing fast food losing a lot of market share because of the equalizing effect that delivery food and food delivery has had, like Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc. And I think that the same opposite effect is happening to Starbucks, is that the value that people are getting out of Starbucks now, people are going to the lowest common denominator. So if you're just ordering off of a menu inside of a drive-thru, what's the big difference between the Starbucks experience versus the McDonald's experience? Well, there isn't as big of a difference anymore. And so the value add that Starbucks had, which was its environment, the culture, and, you know, the free Wi-Fi and the place to sit down, all of that is taken out of the proposition of going to Starbucks. And because of that, you're seeing way more people not going. You see kind of what I'm saying about this?
car as it does when you sit inside a nice environment with a friend. The more price-conscious consumer can make coffee at home now or trade down to an even cheaper coffee place like McDonald's, while the more affluent clientele has access to a bunch of like artisanal spots, to specialty coffee, and to independent businesses that have way more insight and time to discuss the details and intricacies of their products. Independent cafes are now so much more trendy and are seen as a more socially acceptable choice, while Starbucks is better known for employee union busting, boycotts, and being overall bad value for money. I think Starbucks...
So we had a place in Austin, I'm not going to say the name of the place, but it was a place that we would go to and everybody would hang out there. And you didn't have to buy anything to sit down. And I remember this place was an absolute fucking zoo. Like everybody who was between 20 and 30 years old was at this place. And so there was like everything was getting knocked over. People were going crazy. There were homeless people living in there. Everything was going on, right? And they just a strange brew. No, it started with an R. But actually, maybe they did. You know what? Maybe they might have renamed it, because the end result is that they weren't selling any fucking food. They were just paying for a place for a bunch of shitheads to go to and play Magic the Gathering. And so we would go there. We'd play Magic the Gathering for 6 hours, and we'd buy one cookie for $2, and they ran out of fucking money, and so they had to shut it down.
Held on to this idea that they were a real third place when they haven't really been that for years.
Yeah.
At their core, they're a fast food dessert
I
shop that people go to for convenience and consistency. It's more like McDonald's than it is a local community diner. But McDonald's at least has the Big Mac. For Starbucks, far too much of their menu was replaceable, and their niche, unique offerings clearly haven't been enough to keep people hooked, especially not the prices that they're trying to sell them at. And their CEO has recognized this today. They've vowed to minimize price hikes going forward and focus their new strategy on bringing back the cozy interiors. But I think it might be too little too late, because while Starbucks has been doing layoff after layoff, closing stores and forcing AI into the stores that are still around, the competition has been innovating, listening to customers, and actually just like giving people what they're screaming out for. And this might not actually be that obvious if you live in the US, where you can still find Starbucks that are 200 meters away from each other.
Sure.
But it's a lot more obvious in other parts of the world, especially in China, where the story of Starbucks looks a lot more dire.
There's a lot of people in China. This is probably bad.
When you think of coffee culture, China might not be the first country that jumps to mind, but maybe it should. China has taken some 800 million people out of poverty since the 80s, and in the process, they've created this whole new consumer.
If I could get a guarantee from the Chinese government that I would not get re-educated because of my past comments on China, I would go to China. I would love to go to China.
Class. This group of people who are looking for nice little treats to spend their money on. And Starbucks has been for a while desperate to fill that role. They opened their first Chinese branch in 1999 and used their first mover advantage to completely take over. At their peak, they had over 40% of the coffee market, but since then they've had a serious fall off. In less than a decade, they've
By the way, this is exactly what I said.
Gone from holding over 40% of the Chinese coffee market to under 15%. Starbucks had been gambling on this idea that as China became wealthier, consumers there would behave increasingly like Americans. Basically, they'd drink Starbucks and eat McDonald's.
And be fat.
And in a way, the Chinese did begin to behave more like the Americans. Just not in the way that Starbucks expected. Because while China has this large new middle class, that group has been subject to many of the same pressures that you see in the rest of the world. Chinese disposable income levels have been pretty stagnant.
I would even say, I mean, like, if you see a bridge with like 60 girls trying to become the next popular girl streamer that are all sitting on the bridge, broadcasting, putting on makeup, the economy there has a problem. Like, I don't live in China. I don't know what the problem is, but all I have to do is see that and I know something's wrong, okay? It's like if you see a car on fire, I might not know, like, oh, well, is it the carburetor? Is it the radio? I don't know what, but I know it's not good. That car's on fire.
And they've also grown tired of the increasing inflation that a place like Starbucks has been imposing onto its customers. But also, don't know if you've noticed, China has been on a bit of an industrial tear lately. The technology is getting pretty wild over there, and the coffee industry has been...
I'm thinking about getting one of the Huawei, the phones, the laptops, pads they have. Like, they're so cool. And trying out some of the new technology. I've thought about doing a tech review channel and doing stuff like that. It could be a good idea. But Huawei, I don't know how to say the fucking name, right? I mean, I don't know. But yeah, why? Because I think it would be interesting. That's why. It's pretty simple, actually. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting.
Exception. The main competitor in China, Luckin, has capitalized on the dissatisfaction by offering cheap, really customizable
Huawei?
drinks. They focus on mobile-only orders and emphasize speed and convenience at like half of the price of a Starbucks. They often have literally zero seating inside the stores.
Exactly.
And it's worked
like,
really...
look at this, bro. Like, look at this. This right here. Welcome to your cozy little coffee shack right here. This is, I'm pretty sure there are prisons that are more ergonomic than this. Oh, geez.
well for them. It's worked so well that even though Starbucks had a 20-year head start...
It looks like a set for a podcast that gets 20 viewers.
Luckin now has more stores in China than Starbucks does.
Wow.
And whereas Starbucks is closing stores in the US, Luckin is actually expanding into the US.
Jesus.
Having opened a couple of stores in New York City already.
Damn.
In fact, Starbucks was so terrified of this competition that at the opening of the very first Luckin store, Starbucks bought ad space on an empty lot across the street and plastered it with advertising to remind people that they still exist. But meanwhile, Luckin was offering $1.99 coffees.
This is another thing too, that I don't really do this, but a lot of people have like integration with apps. And I think this is one of the reasons why Walmart has been so ahead of the curve and why they've been edging Target out of the competitive retail market, is because I don't think Walmart has been so far ahead of the curve with like food delivery, grocery delivery, online ordering, online shopping. Target is not there. And because of that, I think that's why Walmart is just growing and Target isn't. Target's too woke. I don't think that people are, that has nothing to do with it. It doesn't. Like, I went to Target whenever they had like the gay trans kids thing. And you know what I saw? A construction worker off his shift for 12 hours, walk right by it. He didn't even look at it. Nobody's paying attention to it. They're fucking busy. They just got home from work. They're tired. Like, they're not going to worry about like some like weird fucking like trans kid thing. Like, yeah, it's bad. It shouldn't be there. It's weird. Like, of course it was. But at the same time, that's not the reason why people aren't going to Target. That's not it. Average people don't care. No, they don't really care that much. That if you push it on them, they'll care. But if it's just there, it's not that big of a deal.
Customers. And
it's
I think
anecdotal.
One of those strategies is
it is anecdotal. Like all of everything that I talk about, I just make it all up. And I think to myself, well, what would people do? That's what people do? Okay, that's probably how it is. Yeah. And by the way, do you remember at the beginning of this video where I made up what I thought the reason was and I was completely right? How about that? Usually whenever I make stuff up, there's a reason for it. Life is anecdotal? Yeah. So I don't know. People really don't like that, but yeah.
More appealing than the other. Starbucks is ultimately
There's a mass shooting in Australia. Specs, there's been a mass spamming in my chat. Do you think that I didn't see your message? Specs, what's the rule for spamming in my chat? It's against the rules, mate. So why are you doing it? Because it's worthy of attention? What do you think that my chat would look like if I allowed everybody to use that justification for everything that they thought was worthy of attention? What do you think my chat would look like? 07? Put him in solitary confinement for 1 week, mods. assign him to a solitary confinement cell with 1 meal a day for 1 week. I can't give it a 1 week timeout for this. And also, you have to keep in mind as well that if I now look at your image, I have now reinforced the behavior, which will encourage more of that behavior. You understand that? So I actually now, by you spamming, now I can't look at it. It's a reinforcement schedule. Psychology.
Fast food business, right? It's not a third place.
I just had to let people
was offering $1.99 coffees for new customers, and I think one of those strategies is a lot more appealing than the other.
$2?
Starbucks is ultimately like a fast food business, right? It's not a third place for most of us, and as such, they've been susceptible to many of the same risks that other fast food places are. The McDonald's CEO recently said in an interview that
what we see with middle and lower income consumers is actually a different story. It's that consumers under a lot of pressure in our industry. Traffic for lower income consumers is down double digits.
People don't have any fucking money and they can't afford shit. That's the big problem. That's the big problem. And I'm going to say something. People might not like this. When's the congressional hearing about Twitch Reddit radicalization? It's 10 tomorrow a.m. Eastern time. So that means I'm going to have to be live probably at like 8 a.m. or something, which is going to be very annoying. I will probably wake up and get up for it. That's my plan. But where? What do you mean? It's fucking easy. You just wake up at 8 a.m. What are you, fucking retarded? It's easy. You just do it. The fuck? Anyway, so it's just, yeah, I have stuff to entertain. Yeah, exactly. Don't sleep tonight. Yeah, I don't know. But we'll see what happens, okay? We'll see what happens. Going back to this. People don't have any fucking money. The real thing that I think that this is a big thing, and I would love to extend a larger olive branch to a lot of the liberal people and leftist people that are always against me. We are pretty much aligned on all of these economic problems. You might not think it's because of illegal migration. I think partially it is, but the problem still exists. This is a massive issue. And it's bigger than any identity politics issue. It's probably, I would say it's pretty much bigger than all of the identity politics issues put together. These graphs and like American purchasing power and the amount of money that people can spend on luxuries and creature comforts just on an everyday basis, this is something that is at the very, very core of all politics. That is the main problem. It's not illegal migrants. It's not, I know, it's not trans people. And if you can believe it, it's not even women. It's people's purchasing power going down, people not being able to afford what they want to afford. And what I find to be so sad is that we find ourselves divided over and over and over about these weird identity issues, weird culture issues. While this graph keeps getting worse. I really wish we had a new candidate that could talk through and cut through all the bullshit and actually talk about these real issues. I feel like Bernie Sanders was the last one that did that. Maybe one day there'll be another one. I don't know. I wish there were more people that were aligned with me on this. They only talk about them, not fix the problem. I want to fix it.
And it's because people are either choosing to skip a meal or they're choosing to just eat at home.
Whereas in the past, consumers would usually trade down.
He's wrong, though. Choose is not the correct word. They feel like they have to resort to it.
From sit-in restaurants to more affordable options when the economy got rough, they're not doing that anymore. Prices are so high, even at historically more affordable locations.
Look at this bullshit. A McCrispy is $10. What? It's $10? What do you mean it's $10? And look at this shit here. So back in the day, You could get a, what do you call it? A sundae right here, an Oreo sundae. You know how much my dad and I used to get these for? Because like he and I, we would get them after I would get my braces tightened whenever I was a teenager. I had braces when I was a kid. Luckily, you know, that kind of worked itself out, didn't it? Anyway, it was $1. $1. I remember my mom wouldn't buy me a McFlurry because she said, why would I spend $1 something on a McFlurry when I could spend 39 or 35 cents in order to buy you an ice cream cone and it's the same thing. And I remember almost crying, sitting on the floor at McDonald's because my mom wouldn't buy me an Oreo McFlurry. Very long ago, this was 3,000 years ago, but I still remember the days. And now the cones are $3. Bro, you know what they did? They moved the decimal point. Straight up. It used to be in front of the 3, now it's behind it. What the fuck, man? Childhood trauma? Yeah, and now I'm having adulthood trauma. Bro, you have to save us from this? If I ever became president, I would make it a mandatory federal law that ice cream cones had to be $1. Yes, they're $1.
That trading down to McDonald's is not really a feasible option anymore. And a similar story is playing out with
Executive
Starbucks.
order.
They're not really fancy enough to attract the clientele that would go to an independent coffee shop, but they're not affordable enough to satisfy the people who are looking for a quick way to drink some caffeine. And all of this has been compounded by the fact that society has fundamentally changed quite a lot in the last 5 years.
Yes.
The idea of
COVID.
sitting down for an hour to sip a coffee with friends, like Howard Schultz once dreamed, is basically gone. Individualism has really won, and people's consumption choices are reflecting that. And so the fact that the CEO...
I don't think it's individualism that's won. I think it's convenience that's won. It's convenience and the prevalence of technology. But you could say that that enables individualism. So really depends. It's, I guess, a matter of semantics. But I think that primarily the driving force is the convenience that different types of technology now provide that people used to have to provide in the past.
Is trying to focus on bringing back the cozy new interiors and making Starbucks feel homey. I think it might be too little too late.
Meanwhile, McDonald's looks like a minimum security prison. Like, if you go and you ask one of the ladies there for a straw, it's like going and asking somebody for a fucking knife.
They seem to be convinced that they'll be able to go back
do you have a gun?
to their former glory just by using AI and doing some
I need a gun
renovations.
for my Big Mac.
But I'm not sure how much people actually even want that today, least of all from their local Starbucks. And amongst all of this climate, there are so many more headwinds for them. Coffee inflation is 10 times the average inflation for food, thanks to tariffs and really bad harvests.
Oh my God.
And customers have more high quality alternatives than ever before. But I guess we'll see. For now,
my dad knew a lot about coffee and tea leaves, and like he had special ordered tea leaves and coffee and everything. I don't know a lot about it myself, but I do think that, yeah, probably a lot of it came from Asia. So it makes sense that, you know, it was done that way.
I'm going to stick to my little mocha pot and occasional outing to a nicer cafe.
That's
and
right.
I don't think there's much of a future for Starbucks in my life outside of airports and train stations.
Yeah, airports.
But let me know what you think.
If you think the price is bad here, go to the fucking airport and then you'll have a really good time. Oh, God. So we got the AK heirloom tea. You ever try his tea? I did. I tried it. I'm just not a big fan of it. I've watched a number of his videos before. I think this guy's really well spoken. He's... I think obviously, of course I agree with him. All the reasons why I thought Starbucks was closing were the same reasons that, it is closing. So, yeah, there you go. It's a good video. Make sure to give it a like. Give the guy a sub, man. I like him a lot. And so, it's good to try and support creators that way.